Good evening, welcome to Northern Maine Productions. We are in the workshop. We're working on the old Ariens. This is my old 924-077. It's a ST828. I gotta shut this heater off. There. So this thing got its first workout of the season this morning. Let me see here. I'll open the door up. As you can see, we got a pile of wet, heavy snow last night. And some little wingnut named Austin has been driving his snow sled around and around and around my yard and packed all the snow down before I get it snow blown away. So he's gonna be doing some snow blowing tomorrow and clean this mess up. In the meantime, we gotta. So this needs a little bit of attention. It did run pretty good this morning. I ran it here for a little while. First thing up for grabs here is needs a new cord in the rewind starter. It's been quite a few years since I've done that. I think I put a new cord in this about 10 years ago. So cut that right off. I don't know how this is going to work. Let me set you guys down here for a few minutes and let you watch from the side here. So we're going to cut that knot off. And you can see I wound this up all the way and wedged a screwdriver in there. These aren't quite as friendly to wind up as a Briggs and Stratton. I'm going to pull this cord out, and I've got another piece of nylon rope here that we'll make a cord out of. See if we can get about the same length. I'm going to wear this. I can't remember where I got this fluorescent green nylon rope, but it ought to contrast well with the orange paint on that snowblower. Alright, so let me get rid of that. Let's see if I can remember how to. First crucial thing we gotta do is, this is one of the more important steps. You gotta melt the end of that so that get a nice blunt end on it. And we gotta feed it in through here. Let's see if I can get it in. Wow, I got it the first time. Holy cow. Now, I'm gonna show you how. This is how I. Well, my camera shut off for some stupid reason here when I was putting the rewind cord in, but here's what we got to do. This starter cover has actually got just studs on it, and there's 4 nuts laying right there. I just got to put this cover on here and take a socket wrench and put the cover back to it, and that'll be it for the starter rope detail. And then I'm going to tilt this thing up and see what it's going to entail to change the drive disc on it. I think the drive disc is just about completely worn out, so bear with me here. I'll be back just momentarily. When I come back, the starter will be all on it, so hang on. Okay, so we've got the rewind back on this old thing. Let's see if we can start this old girl up a little bit here and run it for a minute. Jumping, boys. Things running pretty poor. Huh. Yeah, the carburetor's set fairly rich for when it's really cold outside, and it's not very cold in here right now. I've had this heater running for quite a while. I weaned it out a little bit, but as you can tell, the governor's a little bit out of whack on that thing. I'm gonna probably try to do that too. Every one of these that I've had, when they get some time on them, the governors tend to get a little lazy on them. I don't know, there must be something that wears a little bit in there, but usually all you have to do is take this heat shield off of here, or this oven I guess it's called, or a stove. You have to adjust the arm on there. So I think you have to adjust it so that when you've got the idle down and that, you have to make it so that it's making full contact with that governor in there. I think that's the issue, is it's worn some and it's not, it's kind of hard to explain how to do it, but I fixed a few of these, and usually if you just make that little adjustment, get the slack out of that governor, it straightens them right out. And it did this one about 10 or so years ago. I adjusted the governor on this when I first got it and it worked good, but I've noticed in the last couple of winters that it's gotten lazier and lazier and lazier. When you get into the deep snow, the governor is not very responsive on it. It kind of lugs right down, and then it'll open up and to full throttle. But when the thing's right, just as soon as it gets a little bit of a load, it's supposed to open it right up, but it doesn't do that. The thing, it's hard to tell. The motor's probably a little tired on this thing too, but it ran pretty good this morning when I was out in the snow with it, but obviously right there it was running really rich. I'm just about burning the eyeballs right out of me right now. But so the next thing I got to do is I've got to see about putting a drive disc on this. I'm going to have to put some plastic under the gas cap, keep the gas in the tank. And I got to tilt it up and lean it against the wall, take the bottom cover off of it. I can't remember what kind of a job it is to put a disc on these. I don't think these newer ones were so bad. It was the old ones that were hard to put the drive disc on from what I remember. But bear with me. I'll be back momentarily. Hopefully the camera don't shut off this time. I think my battery was dying in the previous part of this video. But anyways, bear with me here and I'll be back in just a minute. Alright, so we're gonna attempt to take this cover off of this thing. I'm gonna set you down here right on this tire for a second. That did not come off. It's easy than I thought it. Alright. What are we looking at here? Jumping, it's actually lubricated fairly well in there. So there is actually still quite a lot of material left on that drive disc. I mean, you got these little weather cracking things here, but that ain't. I've never put a drive disc on this thing. So the issue I'm having with it is it slips when I'm trying to back up with it. And I think probably the only thing that I've got to do is adjust the nut on it. Which we're gonna... Yes, sir, that will still turn. Let's see how that feels. That feels pretty good. So I guess that is actually disengaging. I've never put a belt on that drive system on that thing either. It's always drove forward pretty well, but in the last year or two it's gotten so it slips pretty bad in reverse. I can actually feel that is grabbing. So maybe I'll set the camera down here and see if I can start the thing up again and see if it'll back up. I'll set you guys right here on the workbench. Just a whisker. This may be something I have to tinker with when I'm out snowblowing, actually. But what was going on there when I let off of the clutch, when I was going forward in the lower gears, when I let off the clutch, it tried to keep going. And of course, when that's grabbing a little bit like that, it's hard to shift it too. It's actually still. At one point in time, I had a problem with the drive plate that rotates upward into this drive disc when you pull the clutch. Actually got stuck on this once, and I had quite a time to get it freed up, but it did come loose eventually. So so I don't think that there's much more to do there. The whole thing sure should have some axle bearings put in it, but pretty well worn out. Wow. That just goes to prove you an Ariens will run longer worn out than probably most new machines would run brand new. So that's been that way all the time I've had this thing. I think the person that had this before me, I think this thing spent quite a lot of time outdoors by the looks of it. This is a repair down here that I did, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, or 5 years ago. I had to put a new cutting edge on it. The whole bottom rusted right out of this bucket, and the cutting edge coming right off in it. She was in pretty dire shape. I had this whole bucket right off in here, and I took the impeller and the auger off it. I had to put a new bearing in here on the impeller, which worked out alright. That's worked good ever since I fixed that cutting edge, but I can see I hit something and stove that all to friggin' hell. My door yard's pretty rough out here. The old hot top's pretty rough shape. So, but amazingly, the old thing's held together pretty darn good. I keep saying that this might be the last winter for it, but I don't know. I've been saying that for the last 5 or 6 years, and it just keeps on going. So I think probably I am going to get on partstree.com maybe and see if I can order some axle bearings for that. It's hard to tell if I can even get it's hard to say the hubs will even come off in the stupid thing. This is the first time I've done any substantial work on this thing in many years. I haven't, the last substantial work I done was when I fixed that bucket, and that's been quite a few years ago. Surprisingly, that's holding up quite well. But, well, anyways, I think I'm gonna put the cover back on here and set this thing down, and I'm gonna see if I can get that heat stove cover off the side of the carburetor. That hasn't been off there in many years either, so that could prove to be a pain in the rear too. But might be time to doctor up that carburetor a little bit anyways. The idle circuit's probably just about bunged up full of junk. I've never cleaned the carburetor on this since I bought it. That was the big thing that was wrong with it when I got the thing, was this thing didn't run for crap. The carburetor was plugged right solid. All it would do was just gallop and gallop and gallop. But it's been pretty good. Only one time I got a little bit of water in it in the middle of the winter, and I had to take the float bowl off in it and drain it out, but after I did that it was fine. But I've never put any gas lines or anything on this thing, and as far as I know the electric starter still works on it too, as far as I know. I haven't tried it in quite a long time, but we'll give it a shot here before I get through this video. But anyways, once again, I'm going to set the camera down. I'll put the cover back on, and when I pick the camera back up again, we'll have the heat stove off in there, hopefully. So bear with me here for a brief moment. It'll be a brief moment to you guys. It won't be for me. It'll be a few minutes for me, but hang on. Be right back. Alright, so I'm making some progress here. I did get the governor adjusted. You have to loosen. There's a screw right there on this particular engine here, and this arm will pivot in relation to this little clamp that's on the governor shaft. So what I had to do, I had to loosen that screw, turn this governor shaft counterclockwise, and pull this. I had to throttle up all the way, turn this governor shaft counterclockwise, and pull its arm ahead as far as it'll go, and then tighten the screw up before you let go of it. I don't know if that's the exact procedure for adjusting that, but it worked. It's a lot more responsive now. But I can show you what is probably going on here. I'm sorry about all the squeaking and rattling this thing, but this, look at how much slop is in that governor shaft. And you can actually see that it's been leaking a little bit of oil out of there too, but look at how absolutely worn out that is. The throttle shaft in here has got a little bit of play in it too, so that's the issue I've been having with it running. It hasn't idled good for quite a while, and I took that adapter bracket off here that the heat stove cover bolts onto, and I took this air adjustment screw out of here. And what happens is there's air transfer slots inside the throat of the carburetor that goes to this and bleeds. It's an air bleed past the throttle plate, and you can see right there that there's a little Welch plug in the side of that carburetor body. That's where the idle mixture, the idle fuel comes from. It's siphoned up through the bowl into this, and then this mixes air with that fuel to adjust the idle mixture somewhat. Now, this screw on this particular machine appears to be extremely touchy. So what I did to alleviate the plugged up air transfer slot in there, I just took that jet out of there, and I took the air hose from that air compressor over there, and I actually blew compressed air right into that transfer slot, and that would effectively blow any garbage out of the idle circuit, hopefully. And then I also got down in here in the throat of the carburetor and blew some compressed air in there too, to, you know, because there's obviously no air filter on this thing, so any debris that gets sucked in here is going to get caught in the air transfer slots. It's not a great design, but it works good for winter time. And this carburetor, these particular type of carburetors here, they're pretty much old-fashioned Tecumseh carburetors. They've never been a very great running carburetor as far as I'm concerned. The advantage that I have with this older machine as opposed to newer ones is it actually has an adjustment screw on the main jet, which is, anybody that's had a newer one with that fixed jet in the bottom of that knows what I'm talking about. These friggin' things are wicked cold-blooded when they get that fixed jet in them. I got an MTD machine out back here that has one of these on it, and friggin' thing, you gotta run it on half choked until it's just about completely heated up and hot, and then it will finally run with a choke fully open. But this one here warms up fairly quick. Obviously, if the temperature changes drastically, like if it's extremely cold when you're snow blowing, I have actually had to reach down under here before enriching that up just a little bit to get it to, you know, to get it to run better. So I'll start this up now and see if I can show you guys how much better this runs. It's still cold-blooded. You still gotta prime this stupid thing to get it started. Aggravating thing. Give it. Notice that it idles pretty good now. I don't know if you notice that right there or not, but when you throttle that thing from an idle now, it's right there. It picks up, goes right up to full speed real quick instead of that long drawn out acceleration like it was doing. And some of that I discovered could have been right here in this arm right here too. This was actually quite sticky when I first took the cover off in it. I obviously just dumped a little, put a little bit of oil on it just to free it up a little bit. There's also another screw here on this throttle control that adjusts the spring tension on this. See, when you pick this up, that just puts a little more spring tension on this. So probably, you know, this thing's 30-some years old. The spring's pretty well relaxed on that, I think. A few years ago, I actually turned that all the way in to get more RPM out of it. So it was only running at about half speed. You know, this thing is just friggin' beat. This whole thing is, it's got a lot of time on it. But that's a good thing right there. That shaft where this shifter knob goes down on, that shaft is so rusty that it's actually starting to split that knob right off of there. This poor old thing, it's just a rust bucket. But it doesn't really use very much oil. I have noticed that about it. You know, once in a while you might have to dump a little bit of oil in it. But it doesn't, I haven't changed the oil in it for several years, I'm ashamed to say. I don't, you know, it's a small engine, it only gets a few hours you run in a year, so probably the oil's black in it. No, it ain't too bad. Might actually be a little bit low on oil, actually. It's down just a little bit, still up in the crosshatch area. But so anyways, I'm gonna put the heat stove back on this, and I may go give it a test run tonight. I'm not sure, but these are an amazing old machine. A lot of people don't like Cubs engines, and I'm not going to say that I'm a fan of them, really. This was basically the only application that I really liked to come to. This is an HM80. These Snow King engines were incredibly tough. And the thing that I like about them, the heat stove system works good on this. The carburetor does not freeze up on this machine. And I like the Tecumseh engine as opposed to like the older flathead Briggs and Strattons because they start so much better. This engine's got a lot more compression than an old Briggs has. My parents had an old Toro snow throw here years ago that had a 10 horsepower Briggs flathead on it, and that was a friggin' worst starting thing. You couldn't start that thing with a piece of dynamite when it was cold. And this machine here, I always put 5W30 oil in this. That's what it called for if you were running them in cold temperatures. That's what we used to put in these when they were brand new. When I worked at an Ariens dealer. RC Logging Supplies was an Ariens dealer and a Tecumseh dealer back in the early 1990s, and I worked on a lot of these machines. I put a lot of these machines together right out of the crate. I can still remember it very plainly. You had to put, when these came shipped from the factory, they were in a big wooden crate and it was all covered in cardboard. You had to put this chute on here. This linkage here, there's a knot under here you got to take off. This was attached to the handlebars and it was kind of folded up. You had to put the handlebars on here and on the other side. You had to hook the clutch rod up and adjust the clutch, and you had to hook this other rod on for the blower clutch. You just had to hook the spring and the little S hook up on that. And some of these machines came, if you put a cab on them. This machine actually had a cab on it when it was new, but that's what this is. This used to have a cable that went down through here and up to the back of this bucket to adjust this. But typically the machines that had a cab on them had a big counterweight that bolted onto here. Obviously I don't have that. The other thing that I'm going to put on this machine, if I ever get around to making a set, I'm going to put a set of drift cutters on this thing. That's one thing that I've always missed. My other Ariens I had like this, it was another 924 series. It was an ST826, I think was the other one that I had. And that one had drift cutters on it, and I liked it. I didn't like the bucket on it. It was too narrow for doing a pretty large door yard, so. But these are a great overall machine. I mean, this one's a testament to them. This friggin' thing's been just thrashed, and even though it's all worn out, it still works just like it was supposed to, basically. This thing will go through snow clear up to the bucket. I mean, if you watch back some of my videos that I put on YouTube previously of this thing, you'll see me just out here beside my old garage that used to be here. I've just beaten the friggin' crap out of this thing. Old hard frozen snow, but these are a great machine. I could, I suppose, disassemble this and do some paint work on it and detail it, but you know, with everything that's worn the way it is, to me it's not worth it. These things are everywhere. So I could easily buy another one of these if I wanted to. As old as this is, these 924 Ariens are everywhere. They made them for a long, long time. But anyways, I'm gonna button this thing up. And I might go give it a test run. I may video some of that, I'm not sure. But anyways, I think that's enough for now. I'm gonna shut this camera off and get this heat shield put back on here with my vast array of non-original screws that were in it. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. Have a good evening. Well, it's a few minutes later. As you can tell, I got the heat stove back on this thing. I've got the choke control lever on. We're going to test the electric starter, see how this works. Amazing, it still works. Boy, that old thing's it don't really like to start right up quick. That's how it is. That's probably a wrap for this video. Maybe tomorrow I'll take some video out here of it when I'm working it out here in the dooryard. But I think for tonight I've had just about enough. I've breathed enough of the exhaust out of this thing for tonight. Thankfully, my little ready heater stove has been working good. I've been turning it on here at a few minute intervals here while I had the camera shut off, so you guys didn't have to listen to that. Thankfully, you guys didn't have to listen to that speed air compressor. That thing is extremely loud. Holy cow. It's an oilless compressor. Early 90s old relic. Probably not the best place for it to be mounted. The thing just rattles this whole building when it's running, but still works. As long as it's working, it's gonna stay here. So, well, you all have, once again, have a good evening. I'll talk to you later. Bye bye. fairly minty compared to what it has been running. Might be a little bit of water or garbage floating around in that carburetor. I may take the bowl off in it tomorrow and dump it out, but I just had to richen the jet up just a little bit on it. So you're starting to starve for fuel just a little. But that governor is 100% better. That thing actually responds now when it gets a load on it. So that's pretty awesome. Man, that snow was wet and heavy, and that nephew of mine was out here driving his snow sled around and packed it all down. So I think I'm just going to leave the rest of it, and I'll let him run that miserable little MTD tomorrow and finish cleaning this up. Anyways, that's good enough, I guess. Bye-bye.